This video explains why emotionally unavailable people avoid emotional conversations and how this pattern quietly shapes relationship dynamics over time. This avoidance is rarely intentional or cruel, but it has consistent psychological causes that impact intimacy, trust, and emotional safety. Emotional conversations require vulnerability, and vulnerability often triggers threat responses for people who learned closeness was unsafe early on.
Avoidance acts as protection, not indifference, helping them reduce internal discomfort by limiting emotional exposure during conversations.
When emotions rise, their nervous system often shifts into pause, shutdown, or emotional freezing to regain internal control. Instead of feeling emotions, they move into thinking, explaining, analyzing, or intellectualizing to stay emotionally distant. This creates a psychological wall where conversation continues, but emotional access remains blocked or restricted. You may notice conversations feel unfinished, redirected, or unresolved whenever emotional depth is introduced. This often leaves partners confused, questioning whether they communicated poorly or asked for too much emotionally.
Over time, avoidance shifts emotional responsibility onto one partner, creating imbalance in expression, effort, and understanding.
This pattern persists because avoidance temporarily reduces discomfort, reinforcing the behavior through relief over time. Emotional conversations feel like loss of control to them, not opportunities for closeness, repair, or connection.
The avoidance is not about the topic itself, but about the emotional exposure of the conversation requires. Recognizing this pattern helps you stop personalizing silence or distance as rejection or lack of care. Understanding avoidance brings clarity, allowing you to respond with boundaries instead of chasing unavailable emotional access. Emotional conversations often require self-reflection, which can feel threatening to people who avoid looking inward emotionally. Looking inward can activate shame, unresolved experiences, or emotions they learn to suppress rather than process.
Their nervous system interprets emotional discussion as danger, even when the conversation itself is calm and respectful.
To manage this internal alarm, they unconsciously shut down, change subjects, or disengage from the conversation.
Emotional avoidance can also show up as minimizing feelings, downplaying impact, or reducing emotional intensity verbally. This shifts focus away from emotions and toward logic, facts, or external explanations that feel safer to discuss. Over time, this pattern conditions them to disconnect emotionally whenever vulnerability is required.
For partners, this creates emotional fog, where clarity is replaced by confusion and uncertainty. You may begin wondering whether your needs are unreasonable, even when they are emotionally appropriate.
This imbalance grows as one person carries emotional awareness while the other avoids emotional engagement. Avoidance acts like an emotional brake, slowing or stopping relational growth before it feels overwhelming. Because avoidance reduces discomfort short term, the pattern repeats without conscious awareness or intent. Understanding this pattern helps you set boundaries instead of escalating emotional effort to force connection. Healthy emotional conversations require safety, presence, and accountability, not pressure, persuasion, or repeated explanations. This awareness allows you to orient toward emotional clarity rather than remaining stuck in avoidance cycles. Emotional unavailability often reflects locked emotional access, not lack of interest, care, or intelligence. No amount of explaining or reassurance can unlock emotions unless the person is willing to engage internally. Pushing for emotional conversations too hard can increase withdrawal rather than create connection or understanding. This creates a confusing push-pull dynamic where moments of openness are followed by emotional retreat. Over time, repeated avoidance weakens emotional trust, even if commitment or physical presence remains consistent. Partners often learn to approach emotional topics carefully, fearing shutdown or distance.
This carefulness slowly reduces emotional expression, limiting intimacy and authenticity in the relationship. Suppressed emotions don't disappear. They build internal pressure that eventually affects communication and connection. Avoidance delays emotional release, but it does not prevent emotional consequences long term.
Relationships without emotional conversations rest on unstable foundations, even when everything appears calm externally.
Emotional availability requires balanced participation, where both people can speak, feel, and respond openly.
Openness develops through willingness, not persuasion, pressure, or perfect wording.
And when emotional conversations are possible, relationships move forward with clarity instead of repeating the same conflicts.
When they are not possible, boundaries protect you from overextending emotionally in one-sided dynamics.
Recognizing emotional avoidance helps you choose clarity over confusion and peace over persistent emotional pursuit. At some point, emotional avoidance forces a choice between adapting yourself or honoring your emotional needs.
Many people respond by shrinking their needs, believing emotional safety will come if they ask for less. This adaptation protects the relationship short term, but slowly erodes emotional security and self-trust.
When one person adapts and the other avoids, imbalance becomes the defining emotional dynamic.
Boundaries are not punishments. They clarify what level of emotional access is necessary for connection.
Healthy emotional conversations require presence, accountability, and willingness, not perfection or constant agreement. If those conditions are absent, repeating the same conversations will not create different outcomes. Clarity allows you to release the belief that emotional avoidance is something you can fix alone.
Emotional clarity helps you orient toward relationships that support growth instead of emotional containment.
In emotionally available relationships, difficult conversations feel uncomfortable but not threatening or destabilizing. Emotional openness creates space for repair, understanding, and deeper trust over time. This safety allows emotions to be expressed without fear of shutdown, withdrawal, or punishment. When emotional conversations are possible, relationships move forward instead of cycling through the same confusion. Emotional availability anchors relationships in stability, predictability, and mutual emotional responsibility.
Understanding avoidance doesn't guarantee change, but it gives you the clarity to choose what comes next.
Emotional clarity doesn't come from convincing someone to open up, but from understanding what they are capable of offering. Avoidance is a capacity issue, not a communication failure, and recognizing that changes how you respond. Carrying emotional conversations alone creates fatigue, resentment, and emotional loneliness over time.
Letting go of emotional overfunctioning restores energy, clarity, and self-respect. Boundaries protect your emotional health when conversations consistently lead to shutdown or avoidance. Emotional availability feels steady, responsive, and present, even during difficult conversations.
It does not require chasing, persuading, or proving the legitimacy of your emotions. Healthy relationships allow emotions to be expressed without fear of withdrawal or punishment. When emotional conversations are possible, growth replaces confusion and clarity replaces anxiety. Emotional safety creates a foundation where both people can remain regulated and connected.
If emotional conversations consistently feel unsafe, it's information, not something to push through.
Clarity allows you to decide whether the relationship aligns with your emotional needs. Choosing clarity does not require confrontation, ultimatums, or emotional escalation. It requires honesty with yourself about what you are experiencing and what is realistically available. Emotional awareness creates peace by replacing confusion with understanding and self-trust.